He thought today would be the day he'd walk away. Morning at the hotel moved in small, precise motions, cutlery clinking into cases, espresso steam lifting from the machine, trays balancing like small, careful promises. Zeng Zhidong moved through it all with the kind of calm that came from years of doing things the right way, even when nothing else was going right. His apron was tight at the waist. His name tag had been polished so many times the letters wore the faint shine of habit. Once he had been a room director, making schedules and signing off on renovations. Now he was a waiter, carrying breakfasts and listening to guests mention small troubles he couldn't fix. He kept his resignation letter folded in the inside pocket of his jacket, where a pen and a few bills also lived. He'd planned the day in private detail. A swim at the municipal pool, a late sauna, a buffet with nothing on the schedule. A simple last day of being selfish about time before handing his note to HR. The plan made his shoulders loosen for the first time in months. In the service alley, Chang bumped his elbow against him and lowered his voice. "You're really leaving, Zeng?" Xiaoxin hovered with a tray half-assembled, eyes wide. "Maybe," Zeng said, and his smile was the kind you give to a problem you've already decided to solve. "Depends how today goes." They didn't press. Gossip lived in short sentences here, an economy that spared no one. The murmurs were not mean. They were the way a staff room holds its collective tiredness. Someone muttered about Vice President Pang's latest inspection, about the slow replies from headquarters when the kitchen needed a new stove, about a promise made at the last meeting that had dissolved into silence. It all added up to a simple arithmetic. Effort without authority rarely balanced. "If you're tired, take the break and think," Chingay said, passing a stack of plates. "Nobody will blame you for wanting out." What broke him was not the work itself. Zeng loved the rhythm of service, the way a well-set table made people feel a little more like themselves, the small gratitude that came with a perfectly timed cup of tea. What eroded him was elsewhere. Mismanagement that turned routine problems into daily frustrations, a chain of decision-makers who never saw the people actually doing the work, and a dignity chipped away by whispers about his former position. He'd been moved down, reassigned without the conversation he deserved. You could be good at your job and still be rendered invisible, and that kind of erasure hurt more than tired muscles. "If you've ever felt overlooked at work, drop a one-line comment below," he would have told you, if this were a speech. Instead, he folded his resignation into his pocket and carried on. The hotel was a living room for strangers and a small stage for his private rehearsals. Breakfast service hummed on. An older man sat alone by the window, sunlight catching the silver of his hair. He ordered tea and porridge. Nothing showy, just small, careful choices. Zeng topped up the water, balanced the tray, and moved to the table with a practiced gentleness. The man smiled when Zeng straightened the napkin, the kind of smile that didn't demand attention, but made a person feel noticed. "Good morning," the guest said. His voice was soft, the kind you might hear from a professor or a retired executive who had learned to keep storms small. "Good morning, sir," Zeng replied, and for a moment the kitchen noises dimmed to a background murmur. He kept the conversation steady, asking the usual, "Tea? Anything else?" And the guest's eyes seemed to listen in a way that made Zeng say things he had been holding back. "I've been thinking," Zeng heard himself say. The words had the yield of practice. "I plan to resign. It's better if I step away before I lose what I like about this work." The guest didn't look surprised. He stirred his tea and said, "Sometimes leaving is the only honest choice." They spoke of small things, age, the way buildings hold memory, the little routines that become a person. Zeng admitted the facts without frills, the demotion, the slow answers from above, the way Vice President Pang inspected with a ruler and then left without fixing the real problems. He expected sympathy or a polite change of subject. He did not expect curiosity. "Did you ever manage rooms?" the guest asked. "Yes," Zeng said. room director for years, then a restructure. A manager, then a waiter, the guest repeated, not judgmental, only noting the contour of the life. You carry the work into both roles. There was something like recognition in the man's face. It wasn't a lamping spotlight. It was small and exact. You deserve someone who knows what you've done, he said, and when Zeng shrugged as if to dismiss the compliment, the man only smiled and went on with his tea. After the guest rose to leave, he pressed a card into Zeng's hand. Call the front desk if you change your mind about today, he said, or if you just want advice. He left without giving his name, a polite disappearance like steam. Zeng folded the card into his pocket, along with his resignation. He walked back through the dining room with the kind of lightness that comes from having spoken the truth aloud. The rest of the shift unfolded. Requests met, complaints smoothed, small victories stacked like plates, but the card burned with quiet possibility. Across town, a meeting room filled with light and glass, and the mood inside was precise and a little clinical. Vice President Pang sat at the head of the table, Mr. and Ms. Dai on either side, and a stack of reports lay like honest stones in front of them. They were discussing localization, staffing, and the stubborn gap between the numbers on a page and the people who made those numbers happen. An older man entered quietly, and heads turned as if a current had shifted. He took a seat, and for a moment Zeng's card might have seemed a coincidence. Then the man spoke, and the word chairman folded easily into the room. He had been at breakfast. He had been the unassuming guest who liked porridge. I met a waiter this morning, the chairman said, folding his hands. Zeng Zhidong. He mentioned he used to be a room director. There was a brief, electric pause, the kind that happens when a file you thought ended opens another way. Vice President Pang glanced down at a folder, and then up, the neat architecture of corporate hierarchy wobbling for a moment. He left his name, the chairman continued, and he didn't leave until he was sure the guests were taken care of. I checked his file. He has a record of steady service, crisis management during the renovations last year, things that mattered. I think we need to pay attention to people who actually solve problems here. It read like an intervention. It sounded like a man who'd been in meetings all his life, but still believed detail mattered. When Vice President Pang opened his mouth, his tone was brisk. We have protocols. Protocols aren't people, the chairman said. He's practical, loyal, and he knows the hotel from the ground up. I'd like to offer him a position as an assistant to the vice president, someone who can make sure the reports on paper match the reality on the floor. The room rearranged itself subtly. Mr. Dai exchanged a look with Ms. Dai. If